And Julie.
Well, thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Alex.
Buonasera, everybody, and benvenuti to our wine tasting event. Well, actually, this is not our wine tasting event. This is the information about Italian wine. We're going to go over a little bit about ourselves, what we have done in the past couple of years, how we've gotten to where we are, and teach you a little bit about the Italian wine tasting basics. So from here, I guess the most important place to start is both of us did graduate from Stetson back in 2006 and 2004. We became close friends there. And we really bonded over the idea of loving Italy and loving to travel to Italy. So that's how we started our first company. So our first company was back in 2019. I know what you're thinking. It was a prime time to start a travel agency. But that's when we started our travel agency. I know. So 2019, we started the Italian tour. So we started, actually, my sister is in both of the businesses with us. But she just didn't attend Stetson, unfortunately. So,
unfortunately.
I know.
Go Hatters.
Go Hatters. But yeah, so we start with, the Italian tour. So that's where everything began. We love traveling to Italy. We love talking to people about our experiences traveling to Italy. And everyone kept asking us the same questions. Where do we need to go? Where do we need to stay? What do we need to do? So we really thought about it and we said, why don't we really make a company that emphasizes our love for Italy and our love to travel to Italy. And it was like a creative, way for us to really, express ourselves. We all have full-time jobs outside of the Italian tour and the Italian Cellar, which are full-time jobs in themselves. But, we really wanted a creative outlet that allowed us to help people find their way around Italy. And not just the main sites, but, everything small, everything that we've really experienced. So we decided to create a brand around Italy. And just to let you guys know real quickly, 5 years ago today, we actually met in Rome. We were both on separate trips and we met in Rome and we took this picture and it was on top of the Sofitel Villa Borghese in Rome. And we called it our Stetson reunion. So it's kind of, a very sentimental day for us, I think. I'm speaking for you, but I do that often, I'm told.
But this time it's okay.
This time it's okay. Okay. So yeah. So we really started to love Italy, and this is where the foundation of both of our companies came into play, and we decided we needed to create a brand around our love and our passion for sharing that with other people. So these are the real four, keystone components of both of our companies. And the first one was listening to our customers, listening to our market, and always be willing to pivot. This was super important when we went and created the Italian Cellar. So of course it was an offshoot of the Italian tour, our travel agency. We wanted to find a way to reconnect with customers that we felt like we had lost when we had to cancel reservations. It was one of the most devastating parts of COVID for me personally, is when we had to tell customers, hey, you're not going to Europe this year. All the money that you've saved up, everything that you've been looking forward to doing over the past year, 2 years, some people even, unfortunately, we can't provide that for you right now. So this was really our pivot. This was our way of kind of turning and listening to our customers. They really wanted to still learn about Italy. One of the things that we do with our travel agency is we have an in-depth needs assessment. And we do the same thing. We use that same thing when we use our personal wine advisor services for our wine cellar as well. So, we really go in and we focus on finding what people like and creating that bond with our customer. And sometimes they buy a bottle of wine and sometimes they don't buy anything. Sometimes they buy 3 cases. So, it's really all up in the air. But for us, it doesn't matter. We're sharing our passion. We are really passionate about Italy, traveling to Italy, sharing our experiences with our clients. The second thing, when we created our Italian brand, is finding a support network. And that was really important for us too. In our local community, our friends, our family, people who really care about our success. Successful people care about the success of the people they support, you know? So those people have really been a key factor in us becoming who we are with the Italian Cellar, which I know you're thinking, why doesn't he just get to it? You know, it's coming. Don't worry, it's coming. But these are key points that we're going to come back to later in the presentation. So yeah, you know, we want to provide an impact by putting our stamp on everything that we do, and our stamp is our brand. You know, the ability to make sure that we provide our customers with something that we would like to receive. You know, we want to receive that special package in the mail that's wrapped perfectly and has all the information, and have somebody reach out to us and say, hey, how did you like that wine? What did you think about the tasting notes on this? Did it match what we were providing you guys? And we want to have that conversation. You know, we make the joke, we will talk about wine to a wall. Julie was talking about wine to that wall earlier today. So no, but we'll, you know, any questions that you have, you know, we're happy to answer them for you. And if we can't find the answers, or if we don't have the answers, we'll find the answers. And the last thing that I wanted to go over real quickly is, you know, when we created our brand, when there's a window of opportunity, you know, we either need to implement our strong vision or find a better way, a new take on a universal product. So the universal product was wine and travel. So we talked about wine and we talked about travel. We love traveling, we love going to vineyards. And, you know, it was devastating not only for us to lose clients in the travel industry, but it was also devastating to see our friends, people that we've met, vineyards that we've been to, you know, start either closing down or selling out their products, and selling out in not a good way, you know, actually selling their vineyards to larger producers. So that way, at least their grapes could still be seen or you know, showcased, you know, in the wine world. So that's where we came to the Italian Cellar. You know, COVID was a horrible time for us, but we really, you know, turned grapes into wine. I don't know if that's a thing you can say. Turned lemons into lemonade. It wasn't really lemonade, but we found a way to showcase those small to medium-sized vineyards. I know, look at that. This was, the bottom picture was a photo shoot that we did, and it was a pretty fun day. But anyway, we'll talk about that a little later too. But you know, getting to know us as a company, you know, we wanted to provide our clients with the information and the knowledge and a presentation of a package that's just nowhere to be found. Right. The first thing, when we talked about creating a wine subscription service, the first thing that we thought was, okay, well, there's got to be a lot of great, amazing Italian wine subscription services out there. Let's go and join some of them. So out of the 100 and some that I found, I joined about 25. And wine started coming into my house and my office daily. It was absolutely nuts. But I was not really impressed by anything. The wines were great. Don't get me wrong. Some of them have amazing wines out there. However, the presentation was lacking. The knowledge was lacking. I mean, they might know about wine. They might know about, you know, a subscription. They might know a little bit about a region, but there was nothing there to really, for us to hone in on and learn something off of. We didn't get to meet the families. We don't have, you know, the actual producers or the people that are picking the grapes and stuff like that. We didn't have their input. We didn't have any of their information, which is something that we felt was vital, you know, and I think it's, you know, it's still important today to really be able to reach out to people and connect with them on that, you know, that business to business almost mindset, you know? So that's how, you know, that's how we created our wine cellar. You know, we started out, you know, just a little bit about us. We actually started out in storage units, 20 by 30 storage units, multiples. And you think that that's a lot of space. And then all of a sudden you realize that you go in there to pack one shipment and you have to go into multiple different units to get, you know, those bottles of wine, and you spend all day there. So recently we bought a new facility. It was an old house with a giant basement up here in Virginia. I don't know if I mentioned that we are in Virginia. But yeah, we bought this huge house, and we're in the process of really making it our own, making it a facility that we can really, you know, utilize the most of to help share our love and passion of Italian travel and wine. So that's kind of how we got to where we were today, you know. And one of the things that Julie, and this is going back to a slide a couple of slides ago, is not only do we create a brand, but Julie said a long time ago, you have to know when to stay in your lane. So one of the lanes that I'm not the best in, and that's not just driving in Italy as a whole, but is the map. So I'm going to pass this over to Italy. To Italy. I'm going to pass it over to
Miss
Julie,
Italy,
Miss Italy, our Italian wine scholar. And just to let you know, that's a really high achievement. So if you haven't looked into it after the presentation, go check it out. Italian wine scholar. She has tasted and been examined and tested on so many different kinds of Italian wines. It specializes just in Italian wines. So I'm going to pass it on to you and
Yes, thank you.
Go from there.
Thank you, Ed. Good evening, buonasera. I'm Julie from the Italian Cellar and the Italian Tour. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us this evening. I know there are many of my former classmates from Stetson, many Alpha Pi Omega sisters, just many people from, my time at Stetson, actually our time at Stetson, and we appreciate it so much. And I know that many of you probably knew me while I was at Stetson. You probably understood that I had this little maybe, interest or obsession with Italy. And of course, that comes from the fact that I have maternal grandparents who came from Italy. They had immigrated to the United States. And it's a similar story that many of us share. We have Italian ancestry. My grandparents came from Sicilian Campania and then immigrated to New York. And of course, those are my roots. And many of you probably share those as well. So let's first just talk about Italy because, thank you. So if we look at the map on the left, this is a map of Italy. Now, I also should probably tell you that my normal day job is I'm a teacher. I just finished my 17th year as an English and social studies teacher.
Now,
so maps are my thing.
Just to interrupt a second, you also are a Guinness Book of World Record holder on having the most Italian maps.
Yes, that is very true. I have maps on maps on maps. And I've also visited all 21 regions. So if you were to look at this map right now on the left, you'll see basically a basic map of Italy. And Italy is a country of 60 million people. It is considered one of the top 10 economies in the world. It is also in Europe, in the European Union, it is the second economy, like the top second economy. And that is because when you think of Italian brands, you think of Ferrari, you think of Lamborghini, you think of wine, you think of, major fashion brands, Gucci, Fendi, Albiero Martini, you think of Italy. Yeah. Now, I know I might be a little bit biased with this, but when you're thinking of European fine quality goods, it's going to be from Italy, and you just need to agree with me for this right now, correct?
Correct.
But if we notice, Italian wine is just as diverse as the country itself. Certain textbooks might say Italy is 20 regions. However, there's one region where it's split into two, so it's really 21 regions. I've been very fortunate enough to visit all 21. When I graduated from graduate school in 2007, right after I graduated, I had made my first step into Italy, and it just never stopped. And Charles, of course, knows that, and many people know that. And I've just spent my time going around. So if you notice, the top part of Italy, so to the north, we have the Alps. And then if we go down the central part of the peninsula, because yes, similar to Florida, Italy is a peninsula, okay, but Italy's very flat. And the reason why I'm pointing this, Florida's very flat. And the reason why I emphasize this is that Italy, of course, because of the influence of the Alps to the north, it's a very mountainous country in the north, but it's also a mountainous country down the spine, the central part of the country. And then, of course, as we get towards southern Italy, let's think of southern Florida. What is southern Florida? It's very tropical. It's very warm, Mediterranean type. Of course, for us, it's the Gulf and the Atlantic, but it's very, warmer temperatures. So Italy is very diverse. It's also diverse in its peoples, considering that Italy, if you notice its location in Europe, it was the crossroads for many different cultures. So and maybe some Italians might consider this to be a very controversial thing to say, but Italy, like, what is Italian? There's nothing that specifically pinpoints Italian because, the cultures of Italy are all based on the fact that at one point Italy was multiple city-states with its own cultural traditions, its own cuisine, the cuisine itself, plus its own languages. We also have to the west of the peninsula of Italy, we have Sardinia, which is the second largest island. And that's honestly a country of its own. At one point, it was known as the Kingdom of Sardinia. And then if we go to the southern part, we see the island of Sicilia. And for those of you who have Italian ancestry, just like myself, I would make a bet, and I'm not a betting woman, that most of you, that your ancestors probably came from the island of Sicilia, or they probably came from Campania. And that's what makes Italian American culture, is that so many had immigrated to the United States, in the late 1800s into the 1900s. So now if we go to the map on the right side, this is where we're focusing more on central and southern Italy. And because of that connection to the United States and our United States culture, I mean, come on, we think of spaghetti, we think of pizza, for anyone from the New Yorkers out there, New Jersey as well, I'm not forgetting about you, you see Italian culture every day. However, when we're talking about our wine tastings for this summer, we thought to maybe focus on more of these regions. So for example, our first one has to deal with Sicilia. So Sicilia, again, the largest island in the Mediterranean. And what are some things you think about with Sicily?
With Sicily?
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you the one thing that I'm thinking about from the other night, and that's the pistachios.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So pistachios, the best pistachios in Europe come from, in fact, the eastern side of Sicily. And, when we think of one of my favorite foods, rice balls, arancini, we think of, okay, a cannolo is one. However, when you're dealing with us and you're dealing with most people that I know, we're dealing with cannoli, which is more than one, cannolo. But we're thinking of those iconic Italian foods. Many of them came from Sicily. So that's why one of our first wine tastings, we'll be talking about wines from Sicily that people maybe just don't associate with as much. So can you talk a little bit more about Sicily?
Yeah, definitely. And just to let you guys know real quickly, and we'll go over this again at the end, this is a 3-part series. So it starts today and it goes the 15th of next month in August as well. So the next month, July, we're actually going to do a wine tasting with you guys, and we're going to focus on Sicily. So this is where we really went and dove into our travel knowledge, and what we would actually talk to people when we're doing our needs assessment, when we're, really trying to figure out where they want to go and why they want to visit a certain place and stuff like that. And we take that information and we create a profile for the area,
Right.
So that's what this is right here.
So for example, anyone who orders Sicilian wines or wants to know more about Sicilian wines, what is Sicily? As the largest island in the Mediterranean Sea, it's known for its, arancini, it's known for its pistachios, it's known for really that southern culture. But Sicily is very diverse. In fact, again, I might dare to say that it is probably the most culturally and historically interesting and diverse part of Italy. That might be, for some people, they might not, know about that, because Italy, before it united in 1861, in itself, it is younger than the United States, the country of Italy. However, the Kingdom of Sicily, was really the important part of Italy before it had united. So there's just so many cultural rich parts, and the wines even trace themselves back to the 1800s.
Yeah.
So that's why we wanted to introduce you next month to 2 of those wines.
Yep. So yeah, again, and next month we'll be going over Sicilian wines. Back to our map, we're going to also look at the area of Abruzzo.
Yes, so Abruzzo, even when you look at the map, so actually if you go to the map on the left as well, you see that the region of Abruzzo might look more like it's in central Italy. But when I talked about the culturally diverse aspects of this peninsula, is that culturally, linguistically, the cuisine is more tied to the southern part of Italy.
Right.
In fact, until about 60 years ago, the region of Abruzzo was actually paired with its southern neighbor Molise, and it was known as the region of Abruzzo and Molise. And then they had split in the 1960s, but still, culturally, the cuisine, it's very much a part of southern Italy. And do you ever watch spaghetti westerns?
I do.
Okay,
I
so
do. I like them
spaghetti
a lot.
westerns, I think Clint Eastwood was in some of them even.
Yes.
The thing about Abruzzo that people don't know is that it is the most mountainous region of Italy. It is the background for many of these spaghetti westerns because it's the most similar when it comes to the terrain to probably the western part of the United States.
One of the really ironic things is I didn't get to Abruzzo until 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely fell in love with the region. But one of the really funny things is once I actually saw the mountains and the terrain and stuff like that, I started to get confused in my head thinking, okay, well, wait a second. This is what I thought the West looked like. And then I thought of Arizona and I'm like, the West doesn't look anything like this.
Right.
Why did I even think that?
Right. And so Abruzzo is the most mountainous region. It's also home to one of the most important grapes of Italy.
That's it.
Montepulciano. And this grape, again, most people, when they think of Italian wine even, they think of, I think of Chianti Classico or Chianti, or you think of Pinot Grigio, but Italy and its wines are more than those wines. There's nothing wrong with those wines. However, our goal is to expose you to, all the different types of wines in Italy.
Yep. And that's, that's the thing. So again, looking at our map, I'm gonna breeze through these next couple slides because it really was to just show you how diverse the areas were. So even in northern Italy, look at the differences. You can see the background of the mountains, in the very background of this area right over here on the left-hand side. Then you see the sharp peaks and the lakes, and you see, the more mountainous and green areas over here. You see the attractions, the things that we typically think about of Venice and Milan. You go down to central Italy, and things are a little bit more hilly at that point in time.
I think this is more the iconic
Yeah.
part of Italy. I know before I started traveling there, I think this was the image that I had in my head.
Exactly. It's those rolling hills. It's, David, of course.
Oh,
You've
yeah,
got, Cinque Terre.
Davide.
You've got Florence. You've got just those little hill areas, with the vineyards, the beautiful vineyards. This is where the Under the Tuscan Sun and all of those other great books and movies took place. So then you go to southern Italy, and it's totally different than everything that we looked at before. The beaches, the beautiful, beautiful beaches and shorelines. You've got the rugged houses on the cliffs.
Matera, which was actually, this city was the European capital of culture for 2019. And I was fortunate enough to go there in 2018 before it actually celebrated that, I guess that type of title. And it was crazy because if you look at this was a village that was made out of stone. And that's why they call it the Gran Sassi, because the Sassi meaning the rock. And it was people were moved out of there in the 1950s and displaced because it was considered to be the poorest part of Italy. And now it's part of Italian Renaissance.
Yeah. So, I mean, looking at these areas, again, some major attractions in southern Italy. You can look at how different, even within the three basic terms we have, the north, central, and southern, the regions themselves are totally different. And sometimes even within those regions, they're totally different. So, there's plenty of places to explore. And that's what we wanted to share with people. We wanted to share the idea of not just, the Trevi Fountain and the Colosseum and the Statue of David, but we wanted to share the idea of, giving people the opportunity to learn something and to be able to impress their friends and family with the knowledge they learned from traveling with us or from, tasting our wines. We want you to be able to go out to a restaurant and really, impress your friends and family,
Right.
and not just, not in a pretentious way or anything of that nature. So, to go in from there, we really go into the Italian wine classifications. So again, tell us a little bit about, I guess we're going to check out a couple bottles in a second and kind of show you some different labels and stuff like that. But tell us a little bit about the Italian wine classifications.
Right. So Italian wine has its own language as well. And so producers, you can't just have, a regular Giuseppe making wine. I'm sure you do. However, if you want your wine to be bottled and sold in Italy, the European Union, or you want it to be exported to the United States, for example, there are certain rules that have to be followed. So if you notice on this slide, this is something that we'll review during the first and second wine tastings. I want you to think of Italian wine classification as a pyramid. And at the top of the pyramid, we have a DOC G wine, which is considered a denominazione di origine controllata e garantita. What that simply translates to is that this is a wine, for example, this bottle that I'm holding here, that is a Montepulciano, a Montepulciano di Abruzzo Colline Terimane, DOC G. What I know about this wine automatically is from the Disciplinare, which is the book that basically tells you what I could look up, and trust me, I've spent some time looking these wines up, but I could look up each and every wine and I know the rules of, for example, the harvesting of the grapes. I know the production of the wine. I know the regulation for aging the wine.
Yeah.
I know when and how to bottle the wine, and I even know when that wine can be sold. It even includes information about the color of what the wine should be, even some of the aromas. Italy takes much pride in its products, as we know some of the brands that I mentioned before. But for example, a DOC G wine, I know that from looking at this label that it's going to be the Montepulciano di Abruzzo wine, which is made from Montepulciano grapes. And if it says Colline Terimane DOC G, I know that these grapes can only be from this specific area. I also know that the wine will be produced in a certain manner. I know that it will be aged more than most Montepulciano wines, and I know that it will be bottled at certain times. That's really what Doc G means. It doesn't mean necessarily it's the best wine. It just means there are stricter standards. And usually that wine will also have some type of a sticker on the neck of the wine. This is an old school producer that still uses the old school pink labels that were actually kind of discontinued in 2009, but some producers still use them.
Right.
But then I go down to the next part of the pyramid. I'm still dealing with another Montepulciano wine. And we have here the Montepulciano di Abruzzo DOC wine, which is the Denominazione di Origine Controllata. This means that this wine, the standards not necessarily are lax. It's just the regulations were a little more, freeing for the producer. So instead of having a particular parcel for those grapes, this producer might have a larger area that's considered the protected area for Montepulciano grapes. And then again, it comes to the production of the wine. It talks about the aging of the wine, the bottling of the wine, and the selling of the wine. So that's really the difference between DOC G and DOC. It's just more the rules are a little bit different. And then we go to the third part of the pyramid, which is an IGT wine, Indicazione Geografica Tipica. So I have a wine here that is from the Abruzzo region, just like the other two that I had mentioned earlier. However, with this Pecorino wine, which Pecorino is a white grape, Charles enjoys that wine very much. I know that this Pecorino grape, it will come from Abruzzo, but it will probably have the easiest regulations.
Right.
I mean, it might not even be aged that long at all. It could be aged for maybe a few months. But that's just what they mean, is that as we go down the pyramid, it's just different standards and regulations. Doesn't necessarily mean that the wine isn't as good. Some of my favorite wines are actually DOC wines.
Yeah. And, to bring things down to my level when it comes to talking about wine, I really like to think about it as, which one gives you the most artistic license.
Right.
You can have a DOC G that is more like a classical piece of art. It has, the strict regulations, it has the fine lines. And then you can go all the way down to an IGT that's a little bit, well, it's totally lax, it is still a delicious wine. Just because it has IGT does not have anything to do, or DOC G, with the actual taste or if you like the wine. Yeah, it's all about preferences. And this just gives you a little bit of a guideline on what to look for when you are actually buying a bottle of wine.
Right. So even in a restaurant, because we've eaten at many restaurants, correct?
A lot of restaurants.
Many
restaurants.
But if we were to look at a wine list, especially with Italian wine, some of the DOC G wines have those higher price tags.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily mean, well, I'm going to impress the person I'm with, so I'm going for the DOC G wine.
Yeah.
It's very possible that the wine that you actually want to have paired with your meal is that IGT wine because its preferences and flavors and complement to what you're eating.
Well, and that's the thing too. When you really look at the region, if you're having a meal from a certain region, look for a bottle of wine from that certain region. We're not here to tell you guys, the 100 different ways of knowing everything about wine today. We just want you guys to pick up, one or two things about, the wines that we carry, and maybe some good tips on really understanding a wine list a little bit better. It definitely takes us into our next slide.
I know. So a little bit of Italian 101. I don't know if anyone remembers this, but obviously I had my grandmother spoke Italian to me, but she was speaking. Again, something to keep in mind for those of you who have Italian ancestry and you had maybe grandparents who spoke a little bit of Italian to you, I would probably bet that they weren't speaking Italian. They were speaking Neapolitan or maybe Siciliano or Calabrese, because in Italy, yes, classical Italian, the language of Dante, that is the standard language that you learn in school. But however, we're dealing with the homes, we're dealing with like the everyday life of Southern Italy, and especially the immigrants that came to the United States, they were not speaking classical Italian.
Right.
They were using terms that maybe I shouldn't repeat. However, they were using terms that were part of the Neapolitan language. And that's the thing, is that's something else to respect about Italy, is that some of even the wine labels will be using the regional languages. And I call them languages because UNESCO, honors them as such. You might hear them called dialects, but I refer to them as languages. However, when I was at Stetson, I think it was my junior year, so that would have been when I met you.
Right.
So Monday through Thursday from 8 a.m. to 8:50, I was attending Italian 101, a class, and they didn't offer it very, every year. So I made sure to get myself into that class. So these are probably some terms that I knew then. How crazy is that? Full circle.
Full circle.
But some popular wine terms, in case you do go to a restaurant tomorrow or you're at the store and you're looking at Italian wine, the term classico, Okay, so if we're dealing with a wine that has a classical term, it just means that the grapes came from the historic area. As you explore more of Italy and its wines, you learn more about, okay, like I talked about with the Doc G wines, this wine, the grapes came from this specific area. And I'm not a betting woman, but I would bet that 80% of the time, at least, it's from the historical classical area. Then a term you definitely should know, Dolce, okay? Because, if you're at it, okay, I want you to all, like we're Sophia right now, picture it, Italy, 2022 or 23, 24, 25, whatever. You might be in an Italian restaurant, a traditional one, a real deal, and you might have a wine list and someone will ask you, do you want, a Dolce wine or a Secco wine? And Dolce, you might not want a sweet wine.
Right.
Then there's frizzante. If you're celebrating something, you want a frizzante wine. But there's a difference. We'll have frizzante wines. We have spumante. Frizzante means it's semi-sparkling. So I'm sure we have some Prosecco fans out there. I'm also a huge fan of Moscato d'Asti. I think you are as well.
I am, yeah.
And that's like a semi-sparkling wine. It's not, they call them botticini. So it's just like, it's not too sparkling. And then of course, for a little Italian lesson, so the term liquoroso, whenever you see that term at the end, like this, so the ozo, that means it's just meaning like more of something. So this is a term that for certain wines, they're going to be fortified with higher alcohol. You might not like that, but it's something to know.
And here's the thing, guys, I wanted to go back, after we went through a couple of the wine terms and stuff like that, I wanted to go back and not only show you the beautiful picture of us in Rome 5 years ago today. Did I mention that? But I also wanted to talk about our brand. We worked hard at creating something not only that we're super proud of, but something that we feel like is still to this day not out in the market aside from us. We provide the information. We give customers every little piece of information that we possibly can. That's how we created our personal wine advisor service. So literally, we will sit down with you and talk about what you like and what you don't like, maybe what meals you're going to be preparing that week, and then we'll create a custom shipment just for you. So that's my little plug on our business. I've done it twice now, so we'll go back to more wine terms.
And continue with terms. So Mezzo Classico, that's just, so if you're a champagne fan, remember, you can only use the term champagne if we're dealing with the champagne region of France. However, we're not dealing with France, although I do love France. We're dealing with Italian Mezzo Classico, which would be, those higher end sparkling wines like a Franciacorta. Hopefully I might be reporting live.
I know.
Hopefully I'll be reporting live from a Franciacorta producer soon, within the next week or so, if everything works out. Or who knows, I might be on the news or in jail. But then, when there's a term that's called a riserva wine, think of something that's a reserved, the term reserve, it usually means that it has a little bit of like some type of a higher standard to it. In Italy, it just means stricter aging, stricter production.
Right.
Again, going back to that wine list, do you want a dolce or do you want a secco wine? Most Italian wines are labeled as secco or in plural secchi, but you need to know your taste preferences. And then of course, one of the last ones, which there are more, but I tried to limit myself with the basic ones. Remember Italian 101 with my professor. Superiore, you can just even think of that term as well, like obviously a superior type of wine. Goes back to, look, a producer might have hectares upon hectares of grapes, but we're only going to use this specific, maybe proportion of these grapes to make that wine. So these are just the basic terms.
Yeah, and to go from there, one of the wines, again, so this right here, just to let you guys know, this label over here on the left-hand side is just an example to help, we're going to go into that in a lot more detail during our wine tastings. But this right here is a bottle from our tasting for August 15th. And that's one that Julie had mentioned a minute ago with the actual stamp at the top of the bottle. But yeah, so, the wine label is pretty, is pretty important. And they all read somewhat similarly. Like when you look at wines in America, they're kind of marketed with a picture on the label, so you don't have the information and stuff like that you actually get from the wine bottles that you find that are Italian. So tell us a little bit about that.
Right. So for someone like myself who, probably studies too much, but anyway, the wine label can tell me so much information.
Right.
So for example, looking at the sample wine label that Ed has posted, I see something first, like usually there will be, so for example, this one's called a Rosso Toscano, I know rosso, again, another Italian lesson. What does rosso mean?
Red.
Red. So we have a red Tuscan wine. I know from studying that a red Tuscan wine will probably be the Sangiovese grape. It could be Colorino, it could be Canaiolo. However, this means it's usually a blend. Do we have a year on here?
We do.
Where's
2009.
Right. So the most important thing you would probably like to remember is I'm just using the sample bottle that's on the right side of the screen. So this bottle has a 2017 year on it, whereas on the bottle there it's 2009, and that's called the Annata. That's the Italian term for the vintage. What that tells me is that the grapes for that specific wine were harvested. And the harvest time for grapes is that I'd actually like to be a part of a harvest one year.
Me too.
You know, I think that would be something that would be really cool. But harvest, it depends on the grape, it depends on the region, and it depends on the type of wine that's being like produced when harvesting happens in the months. Usually it starts in July and can go all the way into November. That's prime harvest time. However, the year means the time it is harvested, because as I talked about that Italian wine classification pyramid, just because grapes were harvested in 2019, certain wines, you're not going to see that label on a shelf until maybe 2024, like a Brunello di Montalcino, or, you know, a Riserva Barolo d'Acqui. So besides looking for the type of wine, besides the year, something else is to find. So for example, in the sample label, we have the classification system. You'll see one of three. If we were in Italy, you might see something else called a vino di tavola, which is a table wine. That means Giuseppe or Giacomo was making wine, or Julia in free time. However, in the United States, you'll see one of these three. And we know that this label says Indicazione Geografica Tipica, which again tells me it's going to be the typical grapes from the Toscana region.
Right.
Okay. So those are really more the important things. You'll also see the producer. And we can get really nitpicky because certain regions use certain terms when they're considering calling themselves like tenuta or even Cuderia, meaning like the farmhouse.
Right.
So much to know, but especially when we do the next tastings, I will go through those specific Italian wine labels ad nauseum. That's a Latin term.
Well, you know, and here's the thing. So when we go through a tasting, and we're not going to go through all of our tasting notes or anything like that today, but we are going to use this as our sample tasting notes that we're going to use with you guys in the next couple months as we have our part 2 and part 3. My biggest piece of advice is to start with something simple. If you don't know a lot about wine, choose one of these 4 items and start with it. Look at the color of the wine. You know, what's the clarity? What's the color? Is it ruby? Is it garnet? And once you get that down, move on to the next step. Maybe for me, it's always been the color and, you know, the taste of the wine. You know, is it acidic? Does it have tannins? For other people, it's different things. You know, you might like the body.
Right. Well, of course,
Of course you do.
But of course, I'm more into the aromas. I like to smell the wines. I like to find out, you know, like what does this wine remind me of? And even for someone like for ourselves, like we are still, you know, exploring wines. Remember, who was the sculptor who made the David?
Michelangelo.
And what was Michelangelo's one of his famous quotes?
I don't know his most famous quote.
Sto ancora imparando, which means I'm still learning. I'm still learning. Ed's still learning. We're all still learning because there's so much to know about wine, and especially for us because we're specialists in Italian wine, and we're here to guide you through that. But you know, for me, I like to focus more on the aromas, whereas you like to focus on, you know, the sip of them.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, once you get a couple things down, you can really start to talk to people about it, and you can really open up and explore a whole new world.
Yes,
which is pretty awesome. So.
A whole new world. You don't want me to
sing. We're not singing.
Neither
of us.
Music at Stetson. I'll stay in my lane.
I'll stay in mine too. I did not study music either. So yeah, we really appreciate. We see that there's a lot of people out there. I think there's some questions. Alex, I know you had some stuff about cultural credit and stuff like that. And then we have questions, and then we have some ways for you guys to connect with us as well after we answer the questions.
Yes, thank you guys. So for any current students on the call for this event tonight, very quickly, I'm going to drop this in the chat right now. So this will be a link to the cultural credit survey that I'll need you to fill out in the next 24 hours. And as soon as you fill that out, I'll collect everybody's information, get it to the registrar, and your cultural credit will appear in your My Stetson account. So I'm going to drop that link in the chat right now. And if for some reason you click on it and you start filling it out and you lose it or anything, I drop my email in the chat too. So email me if you have any problems getting to it. And like I said, please fill that out within the next 24 hours if you can, and I'll get it to the registrar as soon as possible. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat right now. I did have a couple come in. So a lot of the students that are on the call tonight are actually in the entrepreneurship program here at Stetson. So Ed and Julie, one that came in was just any challenges that have come up for you guys during COVID with this business. Can you talk about anything there?
Well, I think there are always challenges,
Yeah.
especially when you go into business with something that you are passionate about, but don't know a lot about the logistics. I guess, as far as overcoming those challenges, my one piece of advice would be to be persistent, and, to maintain the same passion that you had when you came up with the idea. If you can't maintain the passion that you had when you came up with the idea, then it's probably not a good idea for you to start your own business. So we've been pretty fortunate. We've had a lot of people who supported us. We do a lot of virtual tastings. We do a lot of, Instagram Live, which let me drop that in there too. If you guys want to go and follow and like us on Instagram and Facebook, it's just the Italian Cellar. I believe Instagram is actually the Italian Cellar LLC. But yeah, make sure and go and follow us. And Saturday nights, we, every other Saturday night, we do a live tasting. But, I think the thing with COVID has always been, to find a way to pivot.
Right.
We mentioned that before when we brand ourselves, find a way to connect with people and find a way to really, express the passion that we have for our businesses. And just so you know, the Italian tour is still in business. We pivoted a little bit with that in the aspect of, we really just do consulting at this point. But we look forward, when things really open up to doing full-on trips again. So I hope that answered the question.
Yes, and Rena dropped in the chat. Will you talk about best temperatures of wines in the next 2 sessions and best ways to store wines?
Of course. So yeah, so the next 2 sessions, we've actually got, oh, you know what I can do? I've actually got it on a slide. How prepared is this? Okay, so the next 2 sessions, we have the 3-part Italian wine seminar. So this was today right here. Your deadline to order wine is right here for either the 4 bottles or 2 bottles. And then you have the Sicilian session and the Abruzzo session. If you just want the Abruzzo wine, you can definitely wait until August 5th, but that's going to be the real cutoff there. And these are going to be the wines that we're going to be showcasing. So these are 4 of our favorite wines. We do have, I do want to mention this too, for those of you who will be joining us for the tasting aspect of everything. We do have some restrictions on where we can ship. Florida is definitely a place that we can ship to, and the other states are listed right here. And I don't believe I put my own state. I forgot my own state of Virginia in here. So we can, if anybody is out there in Virginia, we can definitely ship to you as well, or any of these other states. Otherwise, we'll take the time to help you pick out similar ones. Just let us, drop us an email, give us a call, a text, or something like that, and we will help you figure out, where to get similar wines to what we'll be tasting. And we'll go from there. But yeah, we'll be talking about, we'll actually send that out in an email before of what you need to do with your wines, whether to chill them and stuff like that prior to opening them. If you need to open them before the tasting event, we'll give you all of that information. So it'll come in your package. And just to let you know, if you go to our website, do I have another slide? No, I don't have another slide. If you go to our website, theitaliancellar.com/products in Stetson, it does have the 4-bottle pack. It has the 2 bottles for the Sicily session, and it has the 2 bottles for the Abruzzo session. It also has, I know some people just like white wine or just like red wine. So, we also have an option for just the whites. So 1 white bottle from session 1 and 1 white bottle from session 2, or just the reds. And that was a really long answer for you, Rena.
Oh, very good. And then we had a comment come in here in the chat from Jose, a current student. He said, hello, I came in a little late, but I'm actually very passionate about wine and collect wine in my free time.
Awesome.
I've taken certification courses and have my own collection, and I'm actually going to study abroad in Italy in spring 2022. And I'd love to know the best way to connect with you guys to learn more specifically about Italian wines and expand my knowledge with you all.
Definitely, 100%. So you can go to our website and it has our cell phone numbers and our email addresses. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram. Feel free to reach out. We'd love to talk to you. We love, believe it or not, we love talking about wine. So this was an absolute thrill for us tonight.
And then another question that came in here in the chat, and forgive me if I pronounce or say anything wrong, but do most DOCG wines taste similar since they are kind of following a template? Correct me if I understood that wrong.
All right, so that is a great question. So when we talk about the classification system, DOCG really refers to more of the harvesting of the grapes, like the time frame refers to the production, how to produce the wine, how to age the wine. But there are so many different DOCG wines. As of today,
Right.
there are 76 DOCG wines, and they go from the northern part of Italy down to Sicily. So the wines, they just have the stricter standards, but they are very diverse because actually the first DOCG wine of Italy was a sweet wine from the Emilia-Romagna region called using the Alumni grape. So
Right.
that's a sweet wine. But then one of the more famous DOCG wines, if you think about Chianti Classico or Chianti or Barolo or Barbaresco, those are some of the famous red wines. But then when we think of like dry, the Secco, the white wines, we have, Vernacci di San Gimignano, we have, other wines that are iconic. However, DOCG really just refers to the way the wine is produced and the aging requirements that are very strict, but very diverse palates. Yeah.
And it's specific for the region as well. So it's the grapes for a specific region. So that's why, I guess there is a little bit of an answer in there too, where you can look at the DOCG wines of a specific region. So you look at a Barolo, for example.
Right.
Okay. And you're having the similar, palette, the similar, color, the similar everything else. So that just helps us narrow it down a little bit.
Right. So he mentioned Barolo. So so that's the Nebbiolo grape.
Yeah.
And then the partner, they call the Barolo the king of wine.
Right.
And the queen is the Barbaresco. Same grape. However, if we look on a map, there are two different wine growing areas.
Mm-hmm.
One is going to have sandier soils, which will affect the way that the wine tastes. It'll affect the color. But again, Barolo is aged for 38 months, whereas the Barbaresco will be aged for 26 months. And it just gets that minute. And if we're thinking about, I'm glad you mentioned regions, the most regions with DOCG wines, Piemonte takes the stage. I believe Piemonte has over 15 of those 76. Then we have the Veneto region that has quite a few as well. And the region, there's one region that has 0, which would be Molise, but Sicilia even only has 1 DOCG.
Yeah.
So focus on the regions and then do the deep dive into the wines.
Yep. Anything else?
So thank you. Yes, one more. And I do have to say, Julie, I hope everybody else got it, but I really appreciated the Sophia Petrillo reference earlier.
Oh, picture it.
And then the $1 million question did come in. How do you guys balance your day jobs and this?
Oh boy, do you want to start with that one?
I guess I can start. So, I think, so with my day job, so I run a car dealership. It's a family business. We sell a lot of Jeeps and Ram trucks. And, there's only so much creativity that you can have in car sales. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely love it. I love the customers that we have. We've got a lot of repeat customers. But for me, it really is, a need for finding a creative outlet and something that I'm absolutely passionate about. I love traveling to Italy. I love traveling around the world. I'm very fortunate to be able to have done so. But to be able to share that love of Italy, of wine, of recipes of food and stuff like that with other people is pretty important to me. It's where I devote the most of my free time. So for me, that's my answer.
It's really interesting because I'm a teacher. Like I said before, I finished my 17th year teaching, and it was probably the most challenging year that I could have, hopefully, as a teacher. And if there are any fellow teachers out there, we deserve our summers, and congratulations to us surviving this very challenging year.
Yeah.
However, even for myself, when I was at Stetson University at graduation, I was a senior speaker for class of 2004. And part of my biography said that I would be attending Stetson Law School. However, 2004, there was a major hurricane, Hurricane Charlie, that really shifted, where my life was going, and I started teaching. And it's funny because as a teacher, what am I doing? I'm disseminating information, especially when I'm teaching English. I'm very much, those who know me, I get crazy about commas and periods and such. But then when I'm teaching social studies, some of my students will probably say, this woman is always focusing on Italy. And oh my gosh. However, that's part of my passion. And, I started taking students on trips. I've been to 6 continents. I've traveled to 21 regions. I've been very fortunate, even though life took this U-turn that I wasn't expecting. So for myself, even though I had this, and you probably heard me complain about this school year, at the end of the day, I was still, doing what I do best. And I was talking about, history and Italy, and still, I know what I want. And so that keeps that, even though it was very stressful, trust me, it was, but I know that, okay, where do I find my sense of comfort? I love studying.
Yeah.
I love Italy. Of course, I'm just going to, keep, if there's anything I've learned in this life, is that you have to be prepared for the unexpected and just keep moving forward. And this is how I do that. This is how we do that.
Right.
That is awesome. And Kathy and I both, so this is a great question. We're both jonesing for a trip. So Kathy asked, on the Italian tour side, any idea yet when in-person trips will start up again?
Well, that's a really difficult question, because if you follow maybe in current events, Italy right now, this month, it's day by day. Right. So on Monday, you can finally dine in restaurants again. Museums will be open again. Things will be running more like the Italian machine. I will be there next week. I don't even know what I'll be encountering, and I have things that I need to get done. So So that's why I would say anyone who wanted to plan even an independent trip to Italy, this 2021 is a very challenging year still, because it's very possible, even when I'm there, that things might change, and they might say, okay, now white zones, which means a white zone, which means it's like every, business as usual. It could shift to orange, it could shift to red. I'm hoping it doesn't. I hope we move past that. But 2021 is just a year to let Italy, the rest of Europe, the rest of the world adjust to vaccination, adjust to getting back to normal. 2022, I think there might be a resurgence. However, think about all the people with that pent up travel energy.
That's it.
That I don't even, I was telling Ed, remember I talked about the hotel, that I have a hotel booked next week, that I received an email that, never mind, we decided not to reopen the hotel, we're not reopening. And I had to find another, which graciously that hotel has booked me into another place, but I had to find another hotel.
Right.
Who knows? So that's why, what would you say?
So here's the thing, we're going to get an idea on everything. I'm not going next week with Julie, but we do have a plan to kind of try to really, explore and test the waters in October. But I think, we'll be glad to consult with anyone now through the rest of the year. But planning, I don't think we're going to really plan for anyone else's trips until, the summer of 2022. And we can definitely start planning before then. But we want to hold off on reservations, because it was rough for us. It was rough for us going through the process of getting people excited about trips, finding amazing opportunities for them, and then having to cancel with local vendors, having to cancel with the customer, having to cancel with the hotels, and try to get refunds. And some places have closed and stuff like that. And it was really difficult for us. So our goal is to, like I said, we're going to kind of test the waters ourselves in October. Julie's going next week.
Remember, you might see me on the news.
Exactly. So, we'll really be, we'll really be, testing everything out. But again, we'd love to talk to you about it and start the plans, and kind of go from there.
Awesome. Well, if anybody has any final questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll hang out for a few minutes afterwards, but I do want to say thank you to everybody for tuning in tonight, for joining us. This was amazing. I'll be following up later this week with more information on how to be a part of the wine tasting events in July and August. So we'll follow up there. But again, thank you, everybody. And thank you, Ed and Julie. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank
Grazie
you.
mille.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.